When I was growing up, I was really into rock guitar players like Zakk Wylde, and then even the neoclassical sort of style of Yngwie Malmsteen. Now, both of those guitarists and a lot of the other guitarists that I discovered as well were playing Marshall amps with an overdrive pedal in front and playing searing high gain and really chunky, heavy riffs. So in my head, I sort of associated that with that sound. It's only now, 12 years later, that I'm kind of thinking that Tweed amps are the nearest to the amp that can do it all. So my uncle bought me tickets to go and see Joe Bonamassa. He had a Marshall on stage, but he also had 2 Carolans and a Category 5. The Carolans were based on the Dumble Overdrive Special, which I didn't know anything about at the time. But I had a look into it, and I later found out that the Overdrive Special was inspired by Dumble himself hearing Robin Ford play a piggyback bassman cabinet with a tube screamer in front of it. Dumble had the idea to give Robin Ford an improved version of that sound with the amp and no pedals necessarily needed. This really piqued my interest because it was the first time I noticed a Fender style amp being used for higher gain rock stuff. Fast forward a few years and Bonamassa's playing through 2 Tweed twins and 2 bassmans. At some point, 2 Dumbles came in to replace the bassmans before he went to 4 twins. Now his rig's slightly different again. He's reintroduced the Marshall and there's other Dumbles. But this really caused me a problem because I was thinking, how does he sound the same, or at least as good, with a totally different setup? And it's only now, after years of reading about it and reading into it, that I've really realized how versatile a Tweed amp is. So the main selling point of a Tweed amp for me is whatever direction you want to push it, it has the capability to follow you there. And so if I play a Telecaster, even with overdrive on, it still sounds very clearly like a Telecaster. So now I'm going to swap over to a Strat. I'm going to play the same kind of thing, and you'll hear it sounds like a Strat. It doesn't sound just like a generic Fender single coil guitar. So it's a little bit softer in the top end, doesn't have the same attack that you get from a Telecaster, and it sounds like a Strat neck pickup. If I go to the bridge, sounds like a Strat. Let's swap back to the Tele. So you get the twang of the Tele that you then don't get from the Strat. Even though they're both Fender guitars and you've all played rigs where a Fender will sound like a Fender and the single coil will sound like a single coil, but you hear the nuances with a Tweed amp. Now you can still hear that it's a mahogany guitar with humbuckers, and you can hear that it is a totally different guitar from a Telecaster, even with quite a bit of gain. Now with the Marshall, it'll compress a bit more, so you won't necessarily get that same level of detail. So now we're going to look at the versatility of a Tweed style circuit. Now I don't own a Tweed amp. I really wish I did, but they're just too loud for me to crank up at home or even a gig these days, to be honest. So I'm using the next best thing that I can get my hands on, which is my Line 6 HX Stomp. And I'm using a bassman, a Tweed bassman, into a creamback loaded cab. Now I did actually post a video of this preset on YouTube the other day, and I'll link this to this video. I've turned down the volume knob on my SG neck pickup down to about 3, and you get this beautiful clean tone. And as you wind that up, you get everywhere in between. If we want it a bit brighter, let's go to the bridge pickup. So you could do loads of gigs just with this sound, using the controls on the guitar, which is something I'm a real big fan of. And it sustains really nicely, even though there's not loads of compression and loads of gain. Bridge pickup all the way up. If I turn that back, we get a really nice bright clean tone. There's no band that you're not going to be heard with that sort of sound in, and you've always got more just at the turn of a knob, sorry. The last thing that I want to talk about is how the Tweed amp melds really nicely with loads of overdrive pedals. So you're going to hear now, the amp is still set quite gainy, but I'm going to turn on 3 completely different overdrive pedals, and you'll hear that the character is still present of each one. That's just the amp. Now I'm going to add the tube screamer. Very 700 Hz-ish, mid-focused. Now let's turn on the clon, or the Line 6 version of the clon. And now the last one that I'm going to show you is a little bit of a secret weapon that I've discovered. The Maxon SD9 type drive. Now this is with the tone all the way off, but this gets you into a really smooth lead tone. Because you've got the mids already present in the amp, but it's not a super mid-forward amp, you still hear the mid-range detail of any overdrive that you put into it. So I've shown you 3 quite different examples there in terms of how they feel and how they sound. So you can basically push a Tweed amp into whatever direction you want. It will do country, it will do rock, it will do blues, it will do pop, and it's even been used sometimes by Nile Rodgers on various disco records. Set a lot cleaner. So there we go. That's why I love Tweed amps so much. If you've enjoyed the video, please click subscribe and leave a nice comment if you feel like it. You can leave a horrible one if you want as well. If you've liked the sounds and you're a Helix user, I will put a link to the preset download video so you can get these sounds for yourself. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Lawrence Henderson, and I'll see you soon.